I want you to cast your mind back to early 2012. The Costa Concordia has just run aground off the coast of Italy, Coney 2012 is just getting off the ground, Gautier's Somebody That I Used to Know is dominating the Billboard charts, and conspiracy theorists are bracing for the end of the world. It's also an enormous year for Hollywood, in that the grand plan of Marvel Studios to create a cinematic universe of comic book superheroes is being put to its ultimate test. Despite its seemingly unprecedented triumph, detractors might consider The Avengers to be the start of a massive decline in film, where in its wake, every major studio was in a race to create a cinematic universe of their own, and where the Marvelification of movies began, leading to an age of quippy saturation, ever-expanding levels of ludicrousness, and eventually diminishing returns on increasingly bloated budgets. It's common to think this is a purely 21st century phenomenon, given that outside of the solo Batman and Superman outings, no big-budget comic book movie franchise really went anywhere before now. What if I told you, though, that this had all happened before? No, I'm not talking about the Universal Classic monsters, although I'd forgive you for assuming that. Instead, I want to bring up my other major cinematic obsession. Welcome to the Godzilla cinematic universe.
They would have you murdered. All you'll ever be.
While en route to Japan, a South Asian princess is apparently assassinated during an inexplicable worldwide meteor shower. This wakes up both Godzilla and Rodan, and as they begin to battle, the princess emerges from the ocean, now claiming to be from the planet Venus and carrying a dire warning to the people of Earth. A great evil is about to eradicate all life, just as it once did on Venus. Hearing this, Mothra's twin fairies, understanding the threat, urge Mothra to emerge from Infant Island and convince both Godzilla and Rodan to work together to confront a new alien monster unlike anything they'd ever faced before.
After branching out into the international market in the early 50s, Toho Studios discovered a ravenous hunger out there for big-budget science fiction cinema. Heavily inspired by giant monsters gracing the silver screen over in America, four men helped birth the age of the kaiju: producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, director Ishiro Honda, special effects wizard Eiji Tsuburaya, and world-renowned composer Akira Ifukube. These four men worked together to create some of Toho's biggest tokusatsu productions, including The Mysterians, Battle in Outer Space, and Atragon. However, they are most famous today for creating the largest movie icon ever conceived, Godzilla. After the earth-shattering success of the original Godzilla, Toho put the quartet to work on several more giant monster movies like Rodan and Varan, in addition to pitting the then-villainous Godzilla against its original inspiration King Kong in a high-stakes battle for cinematic supremacy. Though some of these movies did share a very loose continuity, they were never beholden to any kind of strict narrative cohesion. However, that would all change when, in 1964, they were tasked with creating a kaiju more deadly than any that had ever been put to film: GHIDORAH, a beast so fearsome it would take a team of other giant monsters to take it down. The Toho slate was a busy one in 1964. After Mothra vs. Godzilla, the tokusatsu team switched immediately over to Dogora, while GHIDORAH was in early development under the Japanese title Three Giant Monsters: Earth's Greatest Battle, in reference to the three monsters teaming up against a common foe. It would much later be named GHIDORAH the Three-Headed Monster for the English language release. Toho staple Shinichi Sekizawa, who had written both Mothra and Mothra vs. Godzilla, conceived of GHIDORAH as a modern version of the multi-headed Japanese dragon of legend, Yamato no Orochi, only this one would, like Dogora before him, come from outer space. The script Sekizawa turned in was surprisingly faithful to the canon of his Mothra films, leaned into goofy humor, and tried to humanize its trio of heroic monsters in a way that would suit Ishiro Honda's well-known thematic hang-up of the quote-unquote Brotherhood of Man. Alas, upon reading the script, Honda had reservations about this direction, not just because of the comedy, but also because he felt giant monsters shouldn't really be humanized. Toho had final say in the end, however, and so Sekizawa's story remained intact. Delays with another Toho film, Akira Kurosawa's Redbeard, forced Ghidorah to the front burner, so that it could take its place on the schedule as Toho's big end-of-the-year picture. Thus, even while Dogoro was being filmed, cameras began rolling on Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Hey, have you hit that like button yet? If not, I'd really appreciate it if you did. And if you really do like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing as well. If you want to support what I do even more, you can also check out my Patreon to get access to bonus content, vote on future topics, and more. I also have a bunch of other things to promote, like my book, my podcasts, my website, and my Discord server, which are all linked in the description below. With all that out of the way, let's move on. The cast is made up of several Toho regulars, including Dogoro's Yasuki Natsuki as the primary male lead detective Shindo, Mothra vs. Godzilla's Yoriko Hoshi as his sister Naoko, the staple scientist of all the previous Mothra movies, Hiroshi Koizumi, as returning character Professor Mira, the pop duo The Peanuts once again returning as the Shobijin, Akihiko Hirata as the police chief, Kenji Sahara as the newspaper chief, Takashi Shimura as Dr. Tsukamoto, Mothra's Furanki Sakai as the man addressing the diet, and Yoshifumi Tojima in a small role as the ship captain. Also worth noting are Hisaya Ito as the assassin Malnus, taking over the role from Yoshio Tsuchiya, whose commitments on Redbeard forced him to drop out, and future Bond girl Akiko Wakabayashi as the princess-turned-Venusian prophet Princess Salno. The biggest stars, though, were the giant monsters. Haruo Nakajima, who had played Godzilla in all previous film appearances, once again dons the Mosu Goji suit, this time mostly the Mark II version that had a redone head with movable eyes. Taking Nakajima's place as Rodan is Masaki Shinohara, who had previously played one of the Matango Kaijin in Matango. The original Rodan suits from 1956 had long since rotted away, so a new one had to be built that was designed to look more comical and less menacing than the originals. As for Ghidorah, he is played by Shoichi Hirose, who had previously fought Godzilla as King Kong. Hirose arguably had the hardest job of the monster performers, as the suit was by far the heaviest and most unwieldy, forcing him to hunch over with a single metal bar as support. Indeed, Ghidorah caused the most headaches for Honda, Tsuburaya, and the effects team. It required extensive puppetry moving at a frenetic pace, with dozens of people all working together with an almost completely blind Hirose, which led to many instances of wires and necks getting tangled, and the monster not hitting its cues or looking even remotely graceful when it was hoisted into the air. Ghidorah had been conceptualized with red and purple scales with rainbow-colored wings, though this was changed to gold all over. This was explained away as a way to tie it more closely to the planet Venus, but I suspect the gold just looked better on camera, and did a better job of hiding the occasional reflection of stage lighting from the wires. Ghidorah was also supposed to spit fire, but this was changed to the much easier to animate electric gravity beams. This also made things easy on the miniature destructions, as the electricity could be drawn to meet the explosions rather than needing everything to be done in camera. In the end, Tsuburaya and Honda both expressed disappointment in how the physical Ghidorah turned out, which might be why it has so little screen time, but that didn't stop the creature from being a massive hit with younger audiences, leading to its eventual promotion to arch-nemesis status. As for Mothra, one of the larvae from the previous film was supposed to be an adult, but this was scrapped for logistical reasons. A throwaway line was then inserted into the script about how the sibling had simply died off-screen between movies. The only real change to the surviving larva is its eyes, which are now red instead of blue, and it does manage to fly a little in the film, albeit on Rodan's back. Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster released in Japan in late December 1964, earning a hefty 375 million yen in domestic theater rentals. A dubbed and lightly edited version was released in America the following year, itself raking in about $1.3 million gross. In other words, it was a huge hit, arguably one of Toho's biggest tokusatsu flicks, if not the biggest, to that point. This hasn't stopped it from having a surprisingly divisive legacy among fans. In retrospect, it feels like this was a major turning point for Godzilla in particular, even if many other kaiju movies and television shows were already starting to embrace a campier style. This is when the big guy makes his reverse heel turn from villain to reluctant hero, which is where he would remain for the rest of the Showa era. Even Tomoyuki Tanaka would later state that it was a mistake to take Godzilla in this direction against the warnings of Ishiro Honda. However, speaking for myself, I don't see it that way. I'm as big a fan of campy Godzilla as I am serious Godzilla, as enthusiastic about the deadly serious Godzilla -1 as I am eager to see the latest legendary Godzilla as he teams up with a metal-gloved King Kong to fight monsters in the Hollow Earth. I don't think there's anything wrong with silly Godzilla, and indeed, if it weren't for the franchise's goofier elements, I doubt it would have lasted as long as it has, due in large part to how much the fun stuff resonates with children. With that said though, I think Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster is stuck somewhere between the two, in that it wants to be earnest and serious in one hand, but also injects a lot of comedy with the other, especially as it relates to the monsters themselves. Thematically, it really does just boil down to the idea that we should all work together instead of fighting amongst ourselves. Although there is a long-running debate among fans about whether or not Ghidorah is meant to represent the threat of a nuclear China, a debate I'm pretty agnostic about, to be honest. However, even if that subtext is there, the movie is still nowhere near as poignant as the original Godzilla, or even Mothra vs. Godzilla. But it's also not as endlessly entertaining as something totally off the wall like Godzilla vs. Megalon. It doesn't help that Ghidorah doesn't even appear until 2/3 of the way into it, or that very little monster action happens until the movie is almost over. What little there is before that consists mostly of a cringy battle between Godzilla and Rodan in hand puppet form, an obvious side effect of the movie's rushed production. The human stories in Ghidorah aren't terrible, but the mix of pulpy political intrigue and dormant alien psychodrama with characters that only occasionally cross paths by random chance doesn't really work for me, at least not well enough to carry me through the majority of the story. It's nowhere near as interesting to me as the human side of Mothra vs. Godzilla, but I will say the well-stuffed cast makes it worth watching. Despite it all, I still love Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. It's incredibly ambitious, and it does try to respect storytelling between movies in a way that hadn't really been done in prior Toho flicks. It also manages to turn the monsters into fully fledged dynamic characters, something they hadn't really been before. And of course, it introduces Godzilla's greatest enemy, even if those three heads look like they suffer from severe palsy. It's also important to remember that, before this, Toho didn't really think of these movies as Godzilla movies. Godzilla was just one of the monsters in their stable, extremely popular though he may have been. It wasn't until he became a good guy that he really started to become the king of the monsters, one who would never be bested by that pretender, King Ghidorah. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What do you think of Godzilla turning into a hero? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, please don't forget those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, And until next time, when we'll meet the best pole position player of all time, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anyone.
I don't know. Her plane exploded in the air. She was in it. How could she be the only one who survived?
The force of the explosion created a gap between dimensions. And fortunately for her, she fell into it.